Welcome back, viewers. I'm Marianne with Guidacent, here with our Director of Threat Recon, Drew Williams. Drew, thanks a million for coming back with us and talking to us. We're kind of a change of direction. We talked last week about a BIA and what that is and the risks involving it and why people need to really look into a BIA. Give us a direction on what it really entails and how those parts fit together within a BC.
Yeah. So business continuity starts with analysis. Always, you've got to evaluate your current circumstances. And that means looking at your technology, looking at your resources, and looking at your relationships and the assets that you're responsible for. So those are the first factors that you take in consideration.
Before going down the rabbit hole too far, your organization needs to have and provide a comprehensive perspective of what it does, how it achieves its operating objectives, and what everyone's responsibility is with respect to the success of its continued performance. And having an accurate understanding of how your organization functions, including its vision, its mission, and its resources, provides senior leadership with a better perspective on how to manage risks to those important elements of keeping the organization operational in light of a pending crisis or unplanned event.
The next thing you're going to do is assess the environment itself. What controls do you have in place? What effective tools are you dependent upon? What software applications are interdependent upon each other for you to be effective in doing whatever it is that you're doing in business? Then you're going to present a case to test those environments to ensure that they do what they were designed to do, or that they were configured to do, or why you bought them in the first place. So that's going to be the next factor that you take in consideration. And then based on that, and that's where the tabletop comes in and you know, an extended assessment, so to speak.
How the organization generates revenue, or whatever it's in business to generate, is part of the analysis and evaluation process. Reviewing systems, applications for interdependencies, facility security, human resources, and how protected data is, well, protected. These elements are all part of proactively planning a functioning business continuity strategy.
And then from that, you're going to provide a summary of that set of findings that says, here are your red items, here are your yellow items, and here are your not so yellow items. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're green. It just means that maybe they're the last thing on your list that you need to take care of. And you're going to go after remediating those. And then you're going to challenge that again, because it's kind of a development life cycle. And you're going to say, all right, let's validate that the decisions that we made to make these changes are going to be effective in helping us reduce risk and improve our integrity in our system. That's really what it's about.
Planning for every type of crisis or disaster event is impossible. By establishing a strategic plan to direct how to respond to an event, however, becomes a critical asset to overall business operations. How you respond to a situation will also be determined by the type of situation and the resources that have been impacted by the event itself. Playbooks become mission-critical assets as part of an emergency response plan and are usually at the center of a comprehensive and successful business continuity plan.
The thing about business continuity and business resilience is, and if you're familiar with cybersecurity, the CIA triad, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Business continuity is really primarily, in my opinion, about the continuity associated with integrity of an organization and its infrastructure, and then the availability of its resources and maintaining a certain level of confidentiality over those resources. So it's really important you understand the balance between those three as you're building an effective business continuity plan.
Now let's talk about a disaster recovery and how that disaster recovery plays a part in the business continuity. Can you talk to us through that?
Yes, this is actually the tender spot of the triad between a business impact analysis, a business continuity plan, and a disaster recovery plan. Disaster recovery is worthless if you haven't done your homework up front. If something bad happens, and I mentioned this before, something bad always happens. It doesn't have to be profoundly dramatic or catastrophic, but it can still be bad. And it doesn't have to be earth-shaking for everybody. It could be partially damaging to the organization because it affects some of the people within it. But if you don't have the right plans in place before something bad happens or anticipating something bad happening, then it does become a disaster for the organization, for the business. For example, ransomware attacks, which are still very, very popular. And I know one of our future webcasts, we're going to be talking about ransomware. More than half of the organizations that suffer from a ransomware attack are out of business within 6 months. And now that the FBI has come out and said, don't pay those ransoms, the State Department and the FBI have both advised organizations not to do that. In fact, government agencies cannot pay the ransom. insurance companies are now saying, we're going to hit you if you think you're going to use us to pay those ransoms. You need to do what you need to do up front to protect your infrastructure so that if something and when something does affect your business, you know how to recover from it. So it doesn't mean it's always going to work completely. And it's still a disaster that you're recovering from. And it is recovery, which means something bad had to happen. But the more frequently you evaluate what your risks are and you evaluate what your contingencies are in place to address those risks, the less likely those events that are potentially catastrophic are going to be disastrous to your organization. They're going to be painful. They're going to be awful. There's no doubt about it. But you'll recover because you've got the right plan in place. And that, again, requires testing, knowing who to call when something bad happens, knowing when to act, and knowing where to go next in the order of operations. And so a playbook is very essential in that area of focus, if you will. Making sure that you know the right resources and what order in which they need to be contacted, whether they're federal agents or state or local authorities, healthcare officials, if it's a health-related issue, or technology people, if you are a client to a managed service provider. I mean, there are lots of factors that come into play. And you also have to understand which types of disasters that you're going to anticipate. And again, it's not a fireball coming out of the sky and hitting a data center. It's, I live on the West Coast and I'm in a high fault line area. Or, for example, Truckee, California, in a recent winter, had so much snow, they couldn't even operate their ski resorts. Well, that was a financial impact on the ski resort, ironically, in business for skiing.
And preparation without testing is useless. So validating the plan means working through test scenarios ahead of the trouble that may likely not take you out of business, but may still have an impact on how you continue to operate. And adapting to any set of crises means your organization understands what the likelihood of an event will be, and that means testing your plans. Tabletop exercises become essential in the path to peace of mind for all interested parties.
Another one of our viewers has asked, which I find it really interesting, Drew, as we are proceeding right now with things that are happening within the world as we speak. I mean, last week and the weeks before that, these hurricanes that have come through and really disasterized a whole community, which is devastating in of itself. But then you think about the disaster recovery that some of these businesses are truly facing right now. So if they've missed the BIA, and the business continuity and the steps that they hope to have had in place beforehand. But if those have been missed, right now, what do people do? Like, where do they turn and how do they, with that disaster recovery, what are the steps? And instantly, what are you doing? I mean, I just think about that with what we have going on right now.
Yeah, and our hearts go out to these organizations and these people and these families that have to deal with these things. I tell you, I've been through a tornado and they're awful. I mean, they're terrifying. I remember doing a contingency plan for an organization after Katrina. And part of what I had to do is I had to tour that area. And I used to live outside the New Orleans area. And I can tell you, seeing entire cities empty, like completely empty, stores empty, sidewalks like turned sideways. It's just crazy. Some things you're going to get hit like that. Something as absolutely tragic as that. There's no way to anticipate such things, but there are some things that you can do. If you live in Arkansas, for example, and you know that you're in Tornado Alley, you're going to make sure you've got a safe house, you've got a safe room. You've got, my parents lived in Oklahoma and they had a big old giant steel vault in their garage they would go to anytime. And that big tornado that came through and went into a school and tore it up and killed a couple of kids was right across the street from my mom and dad's place. And they were safe because they did what they were supposed to do. And frankly, the tornado didn't hit their home, but they went across the street, so it spared them. But again, their plan was, well, when we hear that the weather report turns south, we're going to take the appropriate steps to protect ourselves and the things that are important to us, our children, those who are our loved ones, perhaps some important, essential other assets that we have, healthcare material or whatever.
A well-developed disaster recovery plan, or DRP, can make the difference between having a minor loss from a catastrophic issue and a major catastrophe truly affecting the outcome of your operation. So first and foremost, make sure that you understand the level of consequences or impact from the event. Make sure that you have effectively identified your recovery time objective and your recovery point objective. And in a future discussion, we can expound on those two topics. And again, we can't overstress the need for a risk assessment. If your organization hasn't had a risk assessment done in at least the last 12 months, now's the time to look at where the risks are in your organization and how they are going to impact your operation. If there is some kind of a disaster or critical event that has taken place, the time to prepare a tabletop or a playbook has passed. So make sure that you've got the appropriate resources ahead of such trouble so that you can lean on those things when the time comes. That's going to be really, really important. All the work that you do in preparation is going to make a difference in how you manage and, so to speak, ride out the storm. And should some kind of disaster or unplanned event impact your organization, take the data that you're learning from recovering from that event so that you can strengthen your infrastructure and improve the odds of even better survival should something else happen in the future.
Thank you to our viewers today for your time, and Drew, for your time in talking about the disaster recovery that so many people truly don't understand that falls within their business structure. And I hope that you've taken note as to where your business structure is today. And feel free to reach out to Drew anytime, as well as me at Marianne.Blackwell@Guidacent.com. We appreciate all that you've given us today, Drew, and the information.
Well, I appreciate it as well. There's a lot of things that you want to take in consideration when looking at risk, and a disaster recovery plan has got to be part of it because, again, we don't anticipate anything bad happening. We don't live that way. But it doesn't hurt to prepare just in case something bad happens. Because again, as I mentioned before, something bad always happens at some level. And if you have any interest, if the clients or the folks that are watching have any interest, reach out to me, Drew at Guidacent.com or cybersecurity@Guidacent.com. And we would be happy to sit down and discuss what those contingency plans need to look like, or those disaster recovery plans that need to happen. Affordable, they're not something you have to pay an arm and a leg for. Requires some planning, some process, some instruction, some information that is very valuable to an organization, especially when the lights do go out. And so remember that the time to call your car insurance to make sure it's up and running isn't the day after the accident. It's before the bad things anticipate to happen. And so that's really what it comes down to.
Well, thank you. Thank you again, viewers. And we look forward to hearing your feedback and your questions, and keep them coming, as this is a revolving door for businesses and industry at this day. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much.
If your organization needs a cost-effective solution to addressing how to best prepare for something unexpected, contact us at BIA@Guidacent.com for an introductory discussion regarding how to best approach preparing your business impact analysis.